Tonight on Nova, living high in the Andes, the camels of South America have remained largely a mystery to the rest of the world. For centuries, the people of this rugged land appreciated the value of these graceful and woolly creatures. But the llamas and their camel cousins were nearly wiped out by others who felt there was no room for the old ways in the modern world. The harsh reality of possible extinction has driven South Americans to try to save these unique native animals in the land of the llamas.
Funding for NOVA is provided by Lockheed, a bold new force in systems engineering, management, and technology services for defense, space, and industry. And the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, supplying healthcare products worldwide. Major funding for NOVA is provided by the financial support of viewers like you. The Andes. They are the spine of South America, 6,000 miles long. Near their southernmost end are the cold, dry steppes of Chile. This is the home of one of the original members of the camel family that has populated South America for millions of years, the guanaco. The guanaco is the living symbol of the remaining wildness of South America. "3,000 miles to the north is the cold, bleak Altiplano, the high plains of the Peruvian Andes. They are the home of the other wild native camel, the graceful and delicate vicun. Peru is also home to the woolly alpaca. It is a domestic animal bred by prehistoric Andean peoples from wild camel ancestors. For over 5,000 years, the docile, shaggy-coated alpacas have been raised by native herders for their excellent wool. The most familiar South American camel is the llama, or as it is properly called in Spanish, the llama. Like the alpaca, the llama is a domestic animal that was bred by Indian peoples from ancestors of the wild guanaco. The robust llama is the pack horse of the Andes, unsurpassed as a beast of burden in this high, thin air and rocky terrain. In the raw, cold, and rugged Andes, the lives of humans and llamas are closely intertwined. The animals offer companionship in a world where living beings are few and far between. The winds that whistle down these lonely plains find their echo in the notes of the cana, notes which accompany travelers and llamas alike as they trek across the empty expanses between the high Andean ranges. The domestic llama is the tallest of the 4 South American camels with distinctive banana-shaped ears. The alpaca is smaller with shorter ears and a woollier coat. The wild animals are more delicate looking. Vicuñas have white bibs and fine cinnamon fleece, while guanacos have brown bodies and dark faces. Camels first evolved 40 million years ago on the Great Plains of the North American West. About 3 million years ago, land bridges formed across the Strait of Panama and the Bering Sea. Some species of camels wandered north and west into Asia and Africa and became the camels we know today. Others migrated south along a corridor of arid mountainous land all the way to the tip of South America. In North America, the camel became extinct about 10 to 12,000 years ago, perhaps wiped out by early hunters. But in South America, they flourished. The ancestors of vicuñas and these guanacos inherited a world of wild extremes, a land of high, thin air and treacherous terrain, sparse vegetation and little rainfall, scorching heat and frigid cold. Over thousands of years, they evolved into creatures that were uniquely equipped for success in the high, cold, arid conditions of the Andes. They developed softly padded feet, which made them sure-footed and fleet on the rocky slopes. Their hearts and lungs became enlarged, permitting them to prosper at elevations where most other mammals would be left gasping for air. They developed fine, dense coats, which provided vital insulation and protection from the bitter cold and dampness of their harsh and hostile domain. The camels were a vital source of meat, wool, and hides to early Andean peoples. Over time, the animals became more specialized and diverged into two distinct species, the guanaco and the vicuña. Vicuñas became more compact and more finely fleeced than the guanacos. The unique adaptations of vicuñas enabled them to graze the very highest grasslands of the Andes, up to 16,000 feet. Even at this extreme elevation, the vicuñas remained fleet of foot and nimble. In this treeless land, speed was their best defense against predators or danger. Abundant archaeological evidence reveals how vitally important the guanaco and vicuña were to early Peruvian peoples. For thousands of years, these wild animals were prominent in the religious, mythological, and practical lives of prehistoric Indian cultures of the Andes. Around 5,000 years ago, mountain people of the central Andes began to interbreed wild camels to create a pack animal that became the domestic llama. And from further crossbreeding, they developed a superior wool-bearing animal, the domestic alpaca. The alpaca was selectively bred for its heavy, fine coat and for its ability to graze high up the steep, wild mountain slopes. The llama, on the other hand, was bred only to work. Known for its docile nature, the llama could dependably carry loads of up to 100 pounds over distances of more than 15 miles a day. By the 1500s, the herds of these animals numbered in the tens of millions, and they played a vital role in the rise of the Inca civilization. Llamas, the Inca people believed, were a gift to them from the sun. The Incas were great warriors and builders. And by the late 15th century, the Inca Empire stretched 2,500 miles, from the jungles of Colombia to the steppes of Chile, with a 14,000-mile network of roads. It was on the backs of the llamas that the Incas built their empire. Llama breeding was carefully controlled to produce consistently strong, dependable animals. Through winter snow and jungle rains, they bore the products of commerce and the material of war to the far corners of the Inca world. The Incas aggressively protected the wild vicun population from hunters and poachers, and as shown in this painting, they staged well-managed roundups, separating the great herds into groups of weak animals for slaughter and strong animals for shearing. Only royalty could wear garments of fine vicun fleece. Commoners caught breaking this edict were put to death. By protecting the best animals and killing off the weaker ones, the Incas practiced a highly effective system of wildlife conservation and management that benefited both humans and animals. Where this grassy valley funnels into the gorge, the Incas once trapped tens of thousands of wild vicuñas. The walls they built to contain the great wild herds conjure memories of a great spectacle that is no more. For the Inca civilization was wiped out by the Spanish invaders of the 16th century. High above Peru's muddy Urubamba River, a jungle crag guards the ruins of long-abandoned Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas. Alone among the Inca cities, Machu Picchu survived the Spanish conquest, but eventually it too fell to ruin. As the Spanish destroyed the Incas and their cities, they destroyed their livelihood and culture as well. Millions of llamas and alpacas were slaughtered. Unlike the Inca civilization, the llamas managed to survive the Spanish invasion, and today they carry their burdens past the mute and massive ruins of the cities of the sun. The llamas and alpacas and their wild kin are native to no place else on Earth. They still survive today in South America, but they do not flourish here as they once did. Pressures from foreign conquest and economic and social change have shrunk their numbers and their range. Today, herds of domestic alpacas and small bands of wild vicuñas are concentrated in the Altiplano of Peru. The range of the domestic llama is wider, with most found in Bolivia. The wild guanaco can be found scattered all the way from northern Peru to the southern tip of the continent. Not surprisingly, the domestic animals have fared much better than their wild cousins. On the high, dry Altiplano of Peru, llamas and alpacas now mingle with the herds of non-native sheep and goats that now number nearly 6 million across the continent. Each morning, motley herds are driven out of rock-fenced corrals by their owners to graze on meadows made newly green by the rains of summer. This is a land where the ancient ways of the native Incas survive side by side with those of their conquerors, the Spanish. These village women still converse in Quechua, the language of the Incas, but their flat hats and fedoras are a legacy of the Spaniards, and the manta that cradles the baby is an Inca invention. In the Inca manner, the llamas wear ear tassels for identification. Although their numbers are declining, llamas are still an important resource for these isolated people. Though it lies near the equator, the high Altiplano is only sparsely carpeted with grass and sparsely settled by animals or people. It is a mix of desert and grassland, where fewer than 10 inches of rain may fall in the course of a year, and where temperatures blister the skin at midday, then drop to far below freezing at night. Here, like the alpaca, Even the cactus wears a woolen coat for protection from the elements. Alpacas are thriving in modern South America. For economic reasons, because of the great value of their wool, and for ecological reasons, because they are perfectly adapted to endure in this hostile land. They have a split upper lip, which makes it easy for them to crop the short green native grass that grows on the high plateau. Called kishna, this grass is the preferred food of the alpaca. The introduced sheep and goats are not well adapted to this tough climate, so they don't fare nearly as well as the camels. These alpacas have recently been shorn as they are each spring. Their fine fleece will regrow in time to ward off the winter's chill. Up to 14 shades of wool may be obtained from alpacas of varied colors. A single herd like this one can provide all of the wool to weave garments of many hues. The finest fleece of all comes from the tuis, the fuzzy-coated yearling alpacas. A cap woven of alpaca wool keeps this youngster snug and warm, while her mother spins alpaca yarn with the traditional drop spindle. The native camels contribute in countless ways to the lives of the mountain people, from hides to fuel, from meat to wool. Only a little of the wool from the Highlanders' herds is for their own use. Most is sold or traded in the marketplace. From across the countryside, all trails converge on the old town of Chinchero in Peru. For traditional Indian peoples, the patterns of life are much as they have been here for hundreds of years. Once a week, the central plaza of the town overflows with the sights and sounds of market day, and wool is one of the forms of currency here. The Quechua women wear decorated hats, fancy attire saved for special occasions. They have brought homespun woolens to market, garments which may be traded for bright-colored yarn and for blankets and ponchos to warm the wintry highland nights. Also to market comes all the produce of the region: potatoes, melons, leafy greens, staples of the local diet since long before the coming of the Spaniards. Each small highland farm produces only part of a family's needs. The barter system provides the rest without the bother of money changing hands. All over Peru, in village markets such as this, garments made of alpaca wool sell for prices that are only a small fraction of their value in the outside world. Today, alpaca wool yields some $25 million in the Peruvian economy alone. But despite its worth as a wool producer, the alpaca, until recently, was in danger of becoming a forgotten resource. In fact, by the middle of this century, poor management, unrestricted hunting, and neglect had brought all 4 native South American camels to the brink of a crisis. Part of the problem was sheep. In Peru and Argentina, sheep ranchers provided tons of meat and wool to local and international markets each year. They viewed the native camels as pests. Early in this century, they called for the eradication of the guanacos and set out to fence them out of their natural range or slaughter them. For decades, thousands of guanacos were killed by ranchers or recklessly harvested for their pelts. Vicuñas, too, were slaughtered. The machines of civilization made llamas obsolete as pack animals. Short-sighted sheep ranchers weren't interested in raising alpacas. South America's camels were thought to stand in the way of progress. It seemed there was no place in the modern world for these animals. If the teeming modern cities of Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina were the way of the future, the prospect was real that the animals once so vividly symbolic of South America itself would one day endure only as monuments cast in bronze. The South American nations slowly faced the fact that unless the treatment and care of these animals improved, the great grassy plains of this continent might be robbed of their wildlife, with their native camels gone the way of the bison of the North American West. In response to the threat, Peru launched a program of conservation, education, and research. Supported by national and international grants and subsidies, it created the Loraya Camelid Research Station near the mountainous Andean city of Cusco. Researchers at Loraya revived principles of selective breeding and animal management that had been largely ignored since the days of the Incas 500 years ago. The first priority was to improve the breeding stock of the llama and alpaca. This would benefit the welfare of the highland peoples directly by giving them stronger, healthier animals. Dr. Victor Bustinza, on the right, is a professor of veterinary science at the University of Altiplano. From the records of the station's herds, he selects the best males for breeding. Each llama, male and female, is chosen for specific strengths, outstanding production of meat, maximum body size, or exceptional stamina in carrying cargo. The males are segregated from the females in a separate corral. But here, as elsewhere, the best-laid schemes may go astray. When a female llama in heat slips into the male corral, the result is pandemonium. To a controlled breeding program, a mating spree would be a mishap of major proportions. The female must be caught and removed quickly. Months of careful selection and planning could be undone by a single accidental pregnancy. As a result of the work at Loraya and similar stations in Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, the llama as a breed has drastically improved. Its continued place in South America's heritage now seems secure. Already vigorous new herds have been established, herds which it's hoped will encourage the mountain people to continue to depend on these camels, which are so well suited to the high altitudes and rocky plateaus of their homeland. The heart of Loraya's research program is its herd of over 6,000 woolly alpacas. Pure white animals are preferred by the fabric mills since their fleece can be dyed any color. So the Loraya herd has been carefully selected and bred for the color and quality of its wool and the health and size of the animals. As with the llamas, the breeding program has resulted in a herd that is a showcase of fitness and productivity. Animals are periodically selected from the herd to be weighed and measured. Regular checks of body size, weight, and yield and density of wool help the scientists and ranchers here determine which animals have the most desirable qualities for breeding. Continued success of the breeding program depends on careful record keeping and monitoring of each animal's reproductive viability. Females that bear no young are routinely eliminated from the herd after 2 years. Males' fertility is tested by more devious means. This lifelike mannequin has been made in the position assumed by a receptive alpaca female. Because male alpaca anatomy makes it difficult to collect semen samples mechanically, this complex deception has been devised by the Llamas researchers to obtain samples by another method. The waiting male is excited by the mannequin's position and promptly begins to mate with it. The semen sample obtained from this male will be analyzed in Llama's lab for sperm count and motility. Its quality and quantity will help determine if this animal should be kept for the breeding program at Llama or not. The researcher provides appropriate sound effects to arouse the ardor of the male. The mating takes about 20 minutes to complete. Afterwards, the semen is promptly collected from a container inside the mannequin. Another superior herd of alpacas is on a sprawling hacienda in the foothills of southern Peru. The herd belongs collectively to about 200 families, members of a stock-raising cooperative. At summer's end, they pool their efforts for the annual roundup of the yearlings in their herd. The older animals were separated from the herd and sheared months earlier. Now, from the high green pastures where they've grazed throughout the summer, the woolly yearlings are driven down to the ranch at the bottom of the valley to be sheared. These animals represent much of their owner's livelihood, their work, their source of wool, and their cash crop. Entire families contribute to the annual effort. For the inexperienced yearlings, this is only the first of many such adventures in their lives. Each alpaca may continue to supply high-quality fleece for up to 10 years. The herds are driven into holding pens. Each animal is carried out to be sheared by hand. The normally calm and docile alpacas are terrified of the noise and confusion and of the unknown. It takes an experienced shearer only a few minutes to clip a 75-pound alpaca yearling. Each yearling will yield about 6 pounds of fine, soft wool. And 1 year from now, the coats of the young alpacas will have regrown, and the animals will be ready to be sheared again. As the day wears on, one after another, the shorn yearlings rejoin the herd. 200 or more will be shorn by day's end. The haul from a single day of work can weigh in at more than 3,000 pounds and will bring in some $5,000 to the cooperative. It is a sizable sum, but still only a small fraction of the worth of the wool on the world market, for middlemen profit enormously from this still archaic marketing process. The wool from the highlands is brought in bales to warehouses in Arequipa near the coast. Here it will be sorted by color, graded for quality, and freed of dirt and tangles. The work is hard, the hours are long, the pay is low, and meals are cooked on the job. But to the struggling Andean nations, the alpaca industry offers a solid boost to their fragmented and debt-ridden economies. Thanks to the success of breeding programs such as Laria's, the volume and quality of alpaca wool has substantially increased in value. Each year, the yield is more than 6.5 million pounds of wool. From small farms and great cooperatives, a sea of wool now flows to feed the multi-million-dollar world demand for fine alpaca fabrics. Since bottoming out in the 1960s, the alpaca population has now begun to grow once more. Throughout the Altiplano, herders have rediscovered the value of raising docile, wool-rich alpacas alongside their sheep. Mixed herds of domestic animals are now a common sight as the llama and alpaca gain prominence in the Andean nations once more. In some remote parts of Peru, flocks of domestic animals now share the high green pastures with herds of wild vicuñas, the original grazers of these lands. The vicuña once roamed these plains in the millions, but by the middle of this century, indiscriminate slaughter and the total absence of effective wildlife management brought them to the brink of extinction. Their turnaround since then is counted as one of the conservation triumphs of the century. The vicuña was declared an endangered species in 1969. International laws banned trade in products made from their wool. Aggressive management and strict government protection have given the vicuña a second chance. Their comeback began in one of the animal's last refuges, Peru's Pampagaleras Vicuña Reserve, a 15,000-acre tract set aside at the very western edge of the Andes to save these once abundant animals from extinction. These pelts were seized from wool hunters, poachers, and thieves who each year simply slaughter hundreds of the gentle animals to strip them of their luxurious fleece. Hector Galban, superintendent of the reserve, has his hands full guarding the wild herds against the poachers. Galban and his co-workers have had to battle formidable odds. For fine, silky vicuña wool is one of the most sought-after fibers on earth, commanding black market prices of up to $1,000 per pound. The value of the wool confiscated from poachers at Pampagaleras alone totals hundreds of thousands of dollars. But strict enforcement of environmental laws and meticulous record-keeping have controlled the poaching. And a deepening understanding of vicuña behavior and ecology based on 20 years' observation in the wild is helping ensure the continued survival and growth of the vicuña population. One of the contributors is this man, Dr. William Franklin of Iowa State University. In the 20 years since the work began, the vicuña population on the reserve has soared from fewer than 2,000 animals to close to 30,000. Today, on the grassy highlands of Peru, wild herds of vicuñas are no longer an uncommon sight, and with their numbers rising, limited shearing of their wool has begun. Their windy, isolated home is a tough and rugged place, one which the vicuñas are perfectly adapted to use. Unlike the dromedaries of Asia and Africa, which can go for weeks without water, the Andean camels, such as these vicuñas, must have water every day. But they are so well suited to this arid terrain and climate that they can obtain nearly all the vital moisture they need by eating the green mountain grasses. Like their physical stamina, their social organization has evolved in response to their environment to ensure their survival in this ungenerous land with little water, little shelter, and limited food. From high ground, this lone male vicuña guards his family group of females and young against competitors. In the strictly ordered world of the vicuña, this prime feeding territory with its clearly marked boundaries of scent and dung is only for the use of this family group. All others are driven away by the group's single adult male. He is called the territorial male. He spends much of his time and energy defending his real estate. Challenges from outsiders are common. Unattached males live in bachelor bands on the fringe of the family groups. They repeatedly test the vigilance of the territorial males. This bachelor band is caught between two defended territories. One territorial male threatens. The other charges. The bachelor males retreat. Within a few years, some of them will establish their own territories and family groups. Only territorial male vicuñas mate with females. Females give birth 11 and a half months after mating. This one is in labor, about to drop her baby. The birth of a vicuña has rarely been photographed in the wild. Each female bears only one offspring per year, and the death rate for newborns is very high, 30 to 40% the first year. The birth of vicuñas nearly always take place in the morning. The coats of morning-born babies have time to dry out and become good insulation for the newborn against the raw and bone-chilling rains of late afternoon. Babies born later in the day will still be wet from their birth, and their coats provide no protection from the cold. Many late-born babies will freeze to death in the night. In this land where cover is scarce and predators all too common, a young vicuña must travel with its mother almost as soon as it is born. To survive, it must be able to run. Like all animals who are preyed upon by others, the newborn vicuña is very mature at birth. Unlike predator animals who are born helpless and even blind, the baby vicuña must be self-sufficient and literally able to stand on its own 4 feet within minutes of its being born. Within 15 minutes of birth, the newborn vicuña can outrun most humans and is ready to follow the herd. For the rest of its days, the young vicuña will range with its kind through a harsh and high domain, where many days are spent in freezing rain and swirling mist in the lofty pastures of Peru. Now protected by law, its population slowly growing, the dainty vicuña with its lovely wool may have regained a stronghold and a future in its native land. More than 3,000 miles south of the vicuña's domain is the wild, windy world of Patagonia. Here in Chile's Torres del Paine National Park is the home of the guanaco. Resourceful, adaptable, the wild guanaco survives throughout the Andes, all the way from Peru to Tierra del Fuego, the largest range of all the South American camels. But the arid, wind-blown steppes of Patagonia are the heartland of its domain. The early days of life are dangerous ones for the young guanaco, for peril looms everywhere. This little chia fox is simply curious. The KG fox presents no problem. But a bigger predator, the puma, is an ever-present threat. Pumas take 10% of young guanacos each year. Speed is the guanaco's only defense. Death takes its toll of the young and the unfit. The offspring of this mother is stillborn. In the wild, nothing goes to waste. The carcass of the guanaco will make a meal for the greatest living scavenger, the mighty Andean condor. Next spring, the female will have another baby. The sawtooth crags of Los Torres del Paine loom over the guanaco's summer pasture. Ever vigilant, this male watches for trespassers. Like the vicuñas, the guanacos live in family groups, with the territorial male protecting his females and their young as they graze. The territory of this family group is a vega, a lush green patch of meadow grass. Formed in a hollow scooped out by a glacier, the vega began as a pond and then gradually filled in with lush and nourishing vegetation. Guarded by the male on the ridge above, the group is secure. But the vegas are not the exclusive property of the guanacos. Upland geese native to the south also graze upon the tender meadow grasses, while the shrubbery along the borders provides a perch for the long-tailed meadowlark. The mother guanacos and their young will spend the long days of summer on these fertile grasslands. The territorial male's family group may include up to 10 females. Between these family members, relations are not always peaceful. The maternal instincts of a female who cannot find her young trigger a warning from another protective mother. Spitting is one of several ways guanacos signal their aggression. The laid-back ears are another. When conflicts flare, a warning is usually enough. Males are more aggressive, but on occasion, even the females will fight. Battles and challenges such as these between adults are vital in establishing, maintaining, and realigning the hierarchy of dominance within the herd. For the young guanacos, play tests and strengthens tender limbs, useful preparation for a life that will be lived largely on the run. During the first year of their lives, the young males in the group practice for the full-scale battles which will mark their days as adults. Though these jousting matches rarely inflict real damage, they serve as valuable dress rehearsals for the roles they will one day be called upon to play to establish dominance and strength and control over a group of females. In the game of King of the Mountain, the holder of the higher ground is the victor. Through the late summer, the yearlings playfully vie for the possession of the highest hoofhold on the ridge. The pecking order that evolves now will be the basis of the dominant structure of their young adult lives. At summer's end, the territorial male routs all the yearlings, male and female, from the group. In this way, he limits the number of animals in his feeding territory and protects the resources of the vega for his females and their newborn young. Driven off, the yearlings now must find new homes. Females join other family groups. Males join other young males. If a rival challenges the control of the territorial male, the result can be a full-bore chase that concludes in a knockdown, drag-out battle. Often these contests consist of little more than bluster and bluff, spitting and threatening, plus a few painful bites. But in a world in which only the fleet of foot survive, a lame limb could prove fatal. Like the vicuña, the guanaco has prospered under the protection of the state. Dr. William Franklin, whose 20 years of research has been so important in protecting the vicuñas of Peru, has also contributed to the understanding of Patagonia's wild guanacos. Over the years, he and his co-workers have tagged and followed many young guanacos through their lives. As a result of such dedicated research, the peoples of South America are gaining a new understanding of the habits and unique requirements of the guanaco. And in turn, they will almost certainly save the guanacos from destruction and will protect this unique and irreplaceable natural resource. The guanacos have been part of this land for thousands of years. In their stature and grace, they embody the spirit of one of the great wild regions of the earth. In countless ways, the lives of the Andean people and those of their native camels are bound together in a powerful union. And the fate of both people and animals may well depend upon that of the other. For centuries, the llama, the alpaca, the vicuña, and the guanaco suffered from neglect, exploited for meat and pelts, or ignored because of the view that they stood in the way of progress. But that view is slowly changing. The heirs of the Inca traditions are rediscovering the old ways, and a new generation has begun to appreciate the value that the native camels of South America can have in their lives. Today, the graceful vicuña flourishes once again on the high Altiplano. And across the grasslands of the Andes, the llama, the alpaca, and the guanaco are thriving as well. Because of public awareness and scientific research, there is now cause for cautious hope that the native camels of South America will always be a part of this wild, majestic domain. Funding for NOVA is provided by the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, supplying healthcare products worldwide. And Lockheed, a bold new force in systems engineering, management, and technology services for defense, space, and industry. Major funding for NOVA is provided by the financial support of viewers like you. For a transcript of this program, send $5 to this address or call 212-227-READ.
This is PBS.